Let's jump right into this explainer. We're looking at the incredibly dynamic, living story of how Indian art literally broke boundaries to reclaim its true identity. It's a journey of absolute resistance spanning centuries, so let's get into it.
So how exactly did Indian art find its modern identity? Because, contrary to those static stereotypes of ancient temple carvings, the modern evolution of Indian art is actually this thrilling story of resistance, discovery, and a profound cultural reawakening.
To understand this, we'll trace the history chronologically. We've got 5 parts. First, the 19th century art renaissance. Second, the pioneers of Indian identity. Third, post-independence modern art. Fourth, abstract roots and global reach. And finally, contemporary Indian art themes.
This timeline maps out the massive historical shifts that completely reshape the canvas of Indian culture. We kick off in the 19th century with the Art Renaissance, hit a huge turning point with independence in 1947, transition into a highly experimental global era, and then land right in the present day with contemporary art.
All right, Section 1, the 19th century Art Renaissance.
Now, picture the 19th century. 2 major aesthetic forces are clashing. On one side, you have British colonialism pushing these really strict Western academic styles, basically forcing realism. But on the flip side, local artists are pushing back, fighting tooth and nail to revive traditional Indian themes. This whole cultural revival was born out of direct resistance to colonial influence. They were blending modern techniques with the deep spiritual and mythological traditions of the Mughal, Rajput, and Ajanta styles. It was a real clash of worlds.
Moving on to Section 2, Pioneers of Indian Identity.
But before we meet the artists who waged this cultural rebellion, we really need to understand the intellectual engine behind it all. The Bengal School of Art. This was an incredibly influential movement that explicitly rejected Western realism. Instead, it was all about reviving traditional Indian techniques and sparking a genuine sense of nationalism. And here's the visionary who founded the Bengal School of Art, Abanindranath Tagore. He wasn't just a painter, he was a true intellectual force. He made it his absolute mission to prioritize local heritage over imported academic styles, to revive Indian nationalism. Tagore aggressively promoted these Indian traditions over Western realism. If you look at his famous works, like Bharat Mata or The Passing of Shah Jahan, these weren't just pretty pictures. No way. They were incredibly powerful political statements. They literally inspired an entire nation and essentially birthed modern Indian painting. Then the torch gets passed to Abanindranath's student, Nandalal Bose. And Bose took things in a slightly different direction, shifting the artistic focus right to the Indian heartland.
Associated with Shantiniketan, Bose drew his inspiration directly from rural life and local village culture. His iconic works, like the Haripura posters and Bapuji, brilliantly took the simple, everyday routines of rural Indians and elevated them onto a national platform. It was a total game-changer, proving modern art could be completely intertwined with village culture.
Meanwhile, we have Jamini Roy, the international folk artist. He took the aesthetic of Bengali folk art and Kalighat paintings and basically stripped them down to their absolute purest forms.
Characterized by these incredibly simple lines and just bold, bright colors in pieces like Mother and Child and Krishna and Balarama, Roy actually forced the international art world to stand up and pay attention. He earned massive international respect for Indian folk art.
Completing our pioneers is the emotional pioneer herself, Amrita Sher-Gil. She is widely considered the pioneer of modern Indian art, and for good reason. She masterfully merged Western painting techniques with profoundly Indian subjects. Through famous works like Three Girls and Bride's Toilet, you can see exactly why she's so revered. She depicted rural Indian women with unprecedented emotional depth. She captured their melancholy, their reality, in a way literally no one else had before. It was a perfect bridge between 2 artistic worlds.
Which brings us to Section 3, Post-Independence Modern Art.
Now, 1947 changes everything. With national independence came an absolute explosion of artistic freedom and experimentation. This unrestricted creativity gave rise to the highly influential Progressive Artists Group, formed in Bombay. They totally discarded the old rules to express social realities, urban life, and personal freedom using bold new techniques.
Let's move to Section 4, Abstract Roots and Global Reach.
Let's look at how the heavyweights of this post-1947 era took Indian art directly to the global stage. First up, M.F. Hussain.
Known for bold lines and vibrant colors, his Horses and Mother Teresa series are legendary. Then you have Satish Gujral, bringing incredibly expressive themes of the partition and human suffering to the forefront, even translating that into the architecture of the Belgian embassy building. And finally, S.H. Raza, who used abstract geometric forms and Indian philosophy symbolism in masterpieces like Bindu and Sarastra. So you have Hussein's energy, Gujral's emotion, and Raza's spirituality, all defining India's new global footprint.
Finally, Section 5, Contemporary Indian Art Themes. Building on that rich foundation, modern Indian artists today are navigating a highly complex, interconnected world. They're tackling massive themes: the realities of urbanization and city life, the complexities of gender identity, pressing environmental concerns, and that constant friction between tradition and modernity. And the medium has evolved too. We're seeing rich cultural diversity expressed through everything from traditional paint to cutting-edge digital art, mixed media, and massive installations.
So, that leaves us with one final thought. How will the next generation of Indian artists shape the global stage? Considering this wild evolution, from the 19th century cultural rebellion to today's high-tech expressions, you just have to wonder what boundary-pushing masterpiece they'll create next. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer.